Sally and I are going to take a look at the stories making headlines around the world. We'll begin with a story on the front page of The Times. The family of a photojournalist killed in Yemen during a US rescue attempt has spoken to the newspaper, saying that Luke Summers would have wanted his release to be secured through diplomacy rather than force.
The French newspaper Le Figaro reports that European Chancellor Angela Merkel, or should I say German Chancellor, of course, has called on France and Italy to put in a lot more effort to ensure that their 2015 budgets comply with European rules.
The Bank of England says the vast majority of British mortgage borrowers could cope with interest rate rises of up to 2%. The Financial Times reports that the bank wants to reassure borrowers that they'll be able to cope when policy changes.
The Daily Telegraph reports US dollar loans to Chinese banks and companies have gone up by 47% in the past year, and as the dollar gains strength, the amount of debt to be repaid is rapidly increasing.
According to the newspaper The Independent, oil giant BP is poised to axe jobs. This after the price of Brent crude oil fell by 35% this year.
And in the UK, Royal Mail is dreaming of a white Christmas, apparently. That's the headline in the Telegraph. The postal sorting system is struggling to read and process addresses on colourful Christmas envelopes. Keep it white, keep it clear, apparently.
Apparently so. Joining us now is Cornelia Meyer, Chairman and CEO of the MRL Corporation. Lovely to have you with us, Cornelia.
Good morning, Cornelia.
Good morning.
Very sad that Luke Summers was shot by his captors during a battle on Saturday. This is after a rescue attempt in Yemen. And what we're seeing now on the front page of The Times is a backlash and criticism from his family.
Well, you know, this is a very hard topic, and our hearts have to go out to the family on one hand. On the other hand, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't in terms of rescuing. The one thing that Britain and America say they will not do, and they rightfully won't do, is pay ransom money. Because if you look at where does Al-Qaeda and where does ISIL get a lot of their money from, it's ransom money. So this is an incredibly hard topic. Your hearts go out to the individuals, but on the other hand, the greater good is to make sure these vile organizations can't raise money with kidnappings.
Just to say that the family wasn't suggesting that they wanted a ransom paid. They were just saying, we'd rather our son be released through diplomacy. That would have been his wishes as opposed to force.
Yes, but how can you do diplomacy with these people? That's the point. Yeah, these are non-state actors, it's hard.
Let's look at Le Figaro. German Chancellor Angela Merkel is pressing France to reform and inviting France and Italy to work a little bit harder to bring their budgets in line.
And rightfully so. I mean,
why now? Why is she talking now, though?
Well, you know, there's two things. A, they need to get the budgets in line. They also need to, especially France needs to do structural reforms, which they're not undertaking. And Mr. Hollande is just politically not strong enough also to undertake them. But one of the reasons, I think, is if you saw the latest numbers coming out overnight from China, markedly fewer imports of capital goods. And Germany is the locomotive of the Eurozone. And what makes Germany so strong is precisely, part of what makes it so strong is precisely these capital goods that they are able to export to emerging markets. So if emerging markets slow, especially if China slows, that's not good for German growth, so there will be less of a locomotive there. So other people need to start taking up the slack.
So what you're saying is, because Germany's feeling the pain because of China ordering less goods made in Germany. Also, of course, Germany's hit by the Russian sanction scenario quite significantly as well. It's looking to other economies in Europe to help it along. Is that what you're thinking?
No, it's just saying, guys, we can't be the only ones, we can't be the only locomotive. You need to start being able to rely on yourselves, which is fair.
And are they able to do that, though?
Well, they need to undertake structural reforms, and those are always hard to do.
Italy and France, hands are massively tied, aren't they, politically?
Yeah. Absolutely, but look, why is Germany doing so well? They had the hearts for reform in the 90s, so they have undergone that pain. So other countries sadly need to do that too.
It's a big debate.
It is one that will continue. One that will continue. The front page of the Financial Times, and this is picked up in quite a few of the other UK papers as well, is taking a look at the Bank of England saying, looking at whether the vast majority of mortgage borrowers could cope if interest rates rose. And some are interpreting this, the Bank of England's decision to look at this as a signal that it's shifting policy. Do you take it this way?
I take it this way, and it may be shifting policy because England's doing better, and so they said we will do forward guidance until the economy is doing better. So the economy is doing better, but I sort of doubt this a little bit if, as they say in this article, the definition of not being able to cope with an interest rate hike is 35% of your income going to mortgage payment, then surely those are more than 2% in the British population.
Right. I mean, the 2% figure is interest rate rises of up to 2%, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if interest rates went up by another 2%, how much we would feel the pain in our pockets.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's interesting with the economy, the UK economy, and obviously we had the autumn statement last week, and one of the big stories was the fact that the deficit's bigger than he thought, and one of the reasons for that is because the tax revenues are not coming in, because we're actually earning less.
No,
we're earning less now, so if mortgages go up, and this will be the first time in many years,
in many years, it will be painful for a lot of
have
households.
Quite a hit on our economy, though, as well.
Interesting, though, this survey, what it found, that if interest rates went up by 2 percentage points, only 4% of mortgage borrowers would respond with lowering their spending or working more hours. Doesn't that seem ridiculously low?
I actually, that's exactly what I question, because if you say 35% is the threshold where you will spend less, then surely there are more than 4% of the British population.
So they're underestimating the response.
The pain.
Yeah.
OK, let's move on quickly. Emerging markets at risk from US dollar. Just explain what this means, Cornelia, and why this matters to us.
Well, if the US dollar rises and you are borrowing in US dollars, as we have 1.1 trillion borrowings in China in US dollars, we have $715 billion in Russia, then obviously your interest payments and your principal are appreciating as the dollar goes up. And, you know, we saw it when the Fed tried to tighten about 1.5 years ago. It had huge effect on emerging markets who are very dependent on the dollar.
And so many would argue, though, with China, they can afford it, can't they? In the interim?
Well, they can. The government can afford it, but you know these are interbank loans and intercompany loans.
And there is concern about risky debt in China.
And there is concern about risky debt, so this may have bad ripple effect in the Chinese banking system.
Let's take a look at BP, which is featuring in The Independent. And for full disclosure, you used to work for BP, didn't you? Well, what this story is saying is that BP is now going to axe jobs, and it's being hit because of the oil price fall.
Well, I think every oil company is hit by the oil price fall.
But does it employ more people when the oil price goes up?
Oh, absolutely. But companies do that. When the going goes good, then there's this other study that you could do, that you can then do in-house and things. And you know, especially European companies. I moved from GE, which is an incredibly lean, you know, well-run, lean company, to BP, and I was quite surprised how liberal, you know, in terms of employment policy BP was.
There was some fat there that could be cut off, is that what you're thinking?
Yes, but, you know, coming from GE, I automatically want to cut fat where I see fat, and I may see fat where there's no fat. But I think oil companies will respond, and it may not be a bad thing, because we've seen, you know, oil prices go from about $40 to $120 in the span of a decade, so maybe it's a good thing.
When, in your view, because you have a lot of experience in the oil markets and working for BP, etc., when do you think the price will shift? When will we bounce off the bottom?
We will bounce off the bottom when
demand... Or are we bouncing now?
We will bounce off the bottom when demand picks up and supply goes down a wee bit, which is why I think the OPEC decision to leave production unchanged, or the quotas unchanged, is a good one. It's a boost to the economy, to the consumers, and will drive some more inefficient producers out.
Have you done your Christmas cards?
Absolutely. I always do my I buy my Christmas gifts in January, and I send my Christmas card and my Christmas gifts on the Monday after the 1st of Advent.
Can I hire you to do my Christmas shopping? I'm so behind.
No, you just need to be more organised, as obviously Cornelia is. The reason we asked, the Christmas cards have been sent. Quick word on this. Royal Mail says it prefers white envelopes instead of coloured envelopes. Why is this?
Because it's easier for the computers to read. Otherwise, they need to hire in all sorts of people to sort of manually read it.
Human beings.
Yes.
Not a bad thing, is it?
Well, would you want to sit there reading envelopes, really?
Some people
Well,
will do that.
I wouldn't,
Just gonna
but
pay
you
their
know, at
mortgage.
Christmas every penny counts. So now the Royal Mail says stick on a white label on the address. That's going to
There you
add
go.
I do that. I do
There you
that.
go.
They're computerized, automated. They just go out.
It doesn't surprise me, Cornelia. Thank you so much
Thank
for joining
you.
us. Sally and I will see you very, very soon. Have a lovely
Bye-bye.
day. Bye-bye.